everybody. This is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Happy New Year, everybody. I just got off work at karaoke. It's 2:30 in the morning, and we had a special karaoke night at the bar, even though it's not Friday or Saturday. And as you can probably tell by my voice, I overindulged. I get free drinks at my job, if you want to call it that. And tonight I was just like, if I'm working New Year's, I'm getting blotto. I'm taking full advantage of these fuckers. So I hope my examination of this GI Combat number 170 is suitable. Once again, these early 70s DC war comics. I mean, I like the late 60s ones too, but I think the 70s, they reached their peak, early 70s. This is a little late. And and pretty much after this thing started going downhill, you know, Joe Kubert stopped drawing. Russ Heath kind of checked out. But this is a kind of a golden age for GI Combat because Archie Goodwin took over as editor and writer. And I don't know, I think that's more important than a flashy artist because Archie Goodwin was like one of the best writers in comics at this time. Well, throughout the 60s and 70s. And I love this cover. This is Ken Barr. Ken Barr went on to be a very popular sci-fi, fantasy, paperback cover artist. Full paints, fully painted. But he did tons of work for DC, especially on the war titles. In fact, I think only on the war titles. I can't think of any other DC work he did. But he's always like doing covers, little 2-page things, a short story here and there. And I guess he realized that he could make more money in the paperback field. Sharp artist, very good. This is a pretty neat cover. Even though there's no sanctuary for you Americana, not even in a church. I don't know, just kind of weird. So this is about the Haunted Tank. The Haunted Tank was a long-running feature in DC War Comics. I think primarily in GI Combat. Could be wrong. I think so. And this one kind of... it seems like they had a continuing story arc. But this is like, you can enjoy this story, on its own. So we start off with, apparently, the leader of the Haunted Tank, Jeb Stuart. I think he's like Jeb Stuart III. And he's in Italy, fighting the Axis. And I guess he fell in love with some woman named Rochelle Massino. And he loved her. And she was wiped from existence by a German landmine. And he's punching this guy, saying, someone in your unit mined that area and led to the death of my girlfriend. And he's wailing the shit out of him. And even his fellow soldiers are like, dude, settle down. Get a hold of yourself. I forgot to mention, guys, this is written by Archie Goodwin and drawn by Sam Glanzman, the great war artist. Sam Glanzman had a very rough-hewn style. If a lot of guys, basically revere this guy, you can see like a lot of the Kubert school guys kind of using techniques that Sam Glanzman did. You can see a little Steve Bissett in here, a little Tim Truman. And it's very rough. It's like kind of rough-hewn art. But there's something about the Sam Glanzman art. Maybe because he served, even though he was in the Navy, his USS Stevens stories in these war comics are really remarkable. It's almost like autobio. Him just talking about his days on a Navy ship during World War II. But this is him talking about the Army, or whatever, I don't know, the Marines or the Army. And he does seem to, I don't know, the layouts in here just seem like, okay, this guy knows what war's about. I don't know what war's about, so I'm just guessing, but it does seem more vital than a lot of war comics I've read. Even though the art's not that great, to be honest. Sam Glanzman isn't like, oh, I'd love him to do a mural on my wall. So apparently, while Jeb Stuart's beating this Nazi, he says it was this guy, Colonel Wessel, and General Price. So he hears that name. It's going to be important later. The haunted tank is impressed by this other outfit. And they're like, basically, you're working for us. So we got a Sherman tank out scouting. Looking for enemy contact. So we want you to, relieve them. Go find them and relieve them. So that's what the haunted tank does. So they find that Sherman tank burning. And this, I don't know what you call these little, not a tank. It's like a military vehicle. And the Germans are basically running away. They find all the Americans dead. Except for one of them is holding on to life for a little. And he says, we try to surrender. And these Nazis just mowed us down. Totally against the Geneva Convention. And I heard someone mention the name Wessel. So now Wessel, Jeb Stuart's like, oh, that motherfucker. He was the one who laid the landmines. And, sorry, I was a little distracted by this homoerotic comic in the midst of a Comic Code Authority book in 1974. So this is weird because, okay, one of the members of the haunted tank crew, there's 4 of them. They're in every story. One of them is a black guy. And the whole shtick of the haunted tank is that Jeb Stuart is a direct descendant of the famous Civil War general, the Confederate general, Jeb Stuart. And Jeb Stuart, see, we see his ghostly face here? He kind of guides him. Every now and then he pops up like Obi-Wan Kenobi, gives him advice, gives him some strategy tips, but always in a cryptic manner. And so they, I guess, had a Confederate flag on their tank, which they lost, 30 issues ago or something. And now they find this new rebel flag on that tank that's burning. And they're like, oh, this is great. We can replace our tank. And all the guys are like, fine by us. Yeah, let's slap on the Confederate flag. Even Gus, the black guy, is just like, all right. Just so weird. I love this panel of Jeb Stuart, his ghost. Just the way that horse is positioned. It's just beautiful. It's graceful and just so nice. So he gives him, once again, a little kind of poetic, cryptic advice. He talks about the chain of vengeance. War is terrible enough without making it a personal vendetta. The chain of vengeance is almost impossible to break. And Jeb basically says, I don't care I'm not listening. I'm going to get this guy. Even though it's not tactically important for the war, he wants revenge on this Wessel guy. So even his fellow Nazi soldiers are like, man, I can't believe you shot those Americans. And he's like, hey, we're in retreat. We don't have time. They would have slowed us down. We had no choice. I mean, of course he had a choice, but it was just expedient. But even his fellow Nazis are just like, dude, that was uncool. So this guy Wessel, turns out he has one arm. So he has vengeance in his heart. Because when he was in Normandy, the haunted tank basically attacked his position and ran him over. I love this flashback art here with this weird pink and red coloring. This is just really striking to me. And look at him getting run over. They just ran right over his arm and chopped it off. So this is the old haunted tank. They used to have one of these like tiny tanks, and but it still said on the side stencil that said the haunted tank. So, all these years he's been like, I'm going to get those guys. And then all of a sudden the haunted tank show up. And they're like, destroy it. And they start lobbing bombs at it. So the haunted tank goes into this gully to kind of cut around them. And HQ radios them and says, hey, wait for us. Don't do anything rash. But Jeb Stuart totally goes against orders, or he interprets them in his own way. Because, he doesn't give a shit. He's totally breaking all the rules for vengeance. Yeah, I don't know what it is about the Sam Glanzman art. He's, literally not that great. But he's just a great storyteller. I don't know, just reading this comic was very riveting. This story isn't the best. Archie Goodwin definitely tells a better story than most mainstream comic writers back then. They're more adult. There's no, stupid lines of, repetition or whatever. Archie Goodwin understood the comics form. He was definitely a step or two above any of the other guys writing. And I gotta say, even the guys I love, like Gerber and McGregor, even Doug Munch, but they have some stuff in all their comics. There's always some embarrassing panel, some word balloon where you're like, hey, come on, guys. But Archie Goodwin, none of that. It's just written for adults. I'm not talking about high art or anything. It's genre stuff. But it's all just good stuff. So basically, Jeb Stuart, he basically tells the guys in the haunted tank, he says, guys, go. I'm not going to risk your lives for my vendetta. He at least realizes that, he wants vengeance, but he doesn't want to risk his friends' lives to do it. So he stays behind. He tells them to retreat. And he's basically going to try to take out Wessel. They catch him first. They figured out how he was going to come on the backside of the village. And they shoot him. Look at this very Kubert-like Sam Glanzman panel. I don't know why, just once again, this isn't Bernie Wrightson, but I love this panel. So many panels in there I just really like, even though I can realize that the craftsmanship isn't that great. So this tank with Wessel in it, basically they're hunting down Jeb Stuart here. Looks like he doesn't have a chance. And then Wessel comes out of the tank. I guess, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. So Jeb Stuart finds this kind of tank lying around and blows up Wessel's tank, the Nazi tank. And with his dying last breath, Wessel crawls out with a gun. And he says, I'm finished, but I'll see you dead also. And this giant statue in this church, Jeb Stuart saw it earlier. He was worried about getting crushed by it, and it falls right on Wessel. It's so weird, though, because, Jeb Stuart warns him, Wessel, wait, don't. It's wait, you want to kill this guy. And he's an enemy soldier. He's a Nazi. It's war. So it's kind of dumb. So Wessel's dead. We just see his little arm poking out. And then his fellow soldiers show up and they bandage him. I guess it was a flesh wound. And he tells the ghost of Jeb Stuart, he says, you hear me, General? The chain of vengeance ends here. You were right. But then we see that General Price, who was Wessel's superior, he hears the news, Wessel dead? He was a fine soldier. I won't let this death barely pass. That American tank will meet again. So the chain of vengeance will continue, if not from Jeb Stuart, but from General Price. I don't have all the GI combats. I don't know if we ever saw General Price again trying to exact revenge. But Just a well-told, really good story. If you like DC War comics, which I do, and I don't know why. They used to have these little one-page things in these war comics, like talking about soldiers, battles. And this one's about Tecumseh. And this is also drawn by Sam Glanzman. Don't know who wrote it, though. It could be Sam Glanzman. He was a writer. Kind of sad about Tecumseh. He was one of the few Indians who had the right ideas. Like, guys, let's stop fighting. The Europeans are killing us all. Let's fight them. Okay, now we have another story. Every battle, you die a little. And this is art by Jack Sparling. I was looking at another GI Combat I bought at the Excalibur comic sale last week. And, oh, God, the Jack Sparling art was terrible. Just like 3 issues before this. It's really, hard to look at. But this is kind of neat. I like this art. And just I don't know, there's something about it, like a real intensity. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, the script is by Frank Robbins. Comic strip artist Johnny Hazard. And then in his old age, he just started writing for DC. And then he started drawing for Marvel. And that was bad. It was terrible. It's one of the worst artists. When you're a kid, you don't like certain artists. Like, I didn't like Jack Kirby when I was a little kid. The 70s Jack Kirby, I thought it was weird. Kind of, I wanted to see Neil Adams, some slick shit. Now I love Kirby. Frank Robbins, I still hate his art. That 70s shit, like The Invaders, all the comics he did. Oh, it's just gross. It's repulsive. But luckily he just writes this. And we start off with this guy kind of shaking a corpse. It's like, you dirty double-crossing, I ought to kill you. You suck me in little by little like they all do. And he says, I knew back when I first saw you. And we have a flashback. And so he's a veteran soldier. He's 29, which means he's seen a lot of combat. And this young green apple shows up, this kid. And he says, hey, they sent me to partner up with you. They figured you could show me the ropes. And he's just, this guy's so jaded. He's seen so many people die. He doesn't want to fucking, mentor some young soldier just to see him die once again. So he's basically pushing him away. Just be like, fuck you. I'm not going to give 2 shits about you. I'm not going to care about you because you might die. So it's a really interesting character piece. It's a really interesting character. So the enemy attacks. And, it's, they're only saved because the veteran guy, he knows a thing or two. He's like, hold back. He's one of those traps that Nazis like to do. And the kid's in awe. He's just like, how did you know? And of course he explains it. He just says, oh yeah. And so basically this tank that was abandoned, this Nazi tank, the crew kind of just left it there, almost like a lure. And they went up into the hills to fire mortars down on them. Because look at these pages. Something about this, it really is just striking to me in this kind of clunky way. And the weird thing is, sometimes Jack Sparling's terrible. And I really like this. I know it sounds crazy, but I see Rick Veitch in here. I see just random artists. So the veteran soldier, he doubles back. He goes around the guys with the mortar, and he totally takes them out. All of a sudden, he hears a gunshot. He's like, oh shit, someone's behind me. And he's waiting to feel the impact of the bullet. But he doesn't feel anything because it's that young kid, the green apple. He shot this Nazi who was about to kill him. It turns out this little kid is more formidable than he ever imagined. He says, yeah, I tried to figure out just like you would. I figured there might be a spotter planted higher up to call their shots. So I followed you and went up to the higher banks or the higher range. And I saw the guy just like I figured. So he's getting battle savvy fast. And he's still humble, though. He's like, is it okay if I tag along now? And the guy, of course, is like, oh, I guess. You just saved my life. But, man, I love this panel. Look at that. That is incredible. Just him in the foreground. The composition's amazing. The art's amazing. I've never thought I'd like a Jack Sparling story this much. I've seen, a bunch of them over since I was a kid. He was in Atlas Comics, and he was usually terrible. But this story kind of blows me away. I really like it. And then, so he's like, sure, kid, you can, tag along. And the kid gets hit by a landmine. Oh, I'm sorry, he walks on a landmine. And it's this really powerful scene that now we flash back to flash forward to that first page. And he's just grabbing the kid by his lapels saying, I ought to kill you if you weren't already dead. Who asked you along? Who needed you? And then he says, no more attachments. And he's sobbing, he's crying. You latch onto somebody, he gets it. You die. That is just like, this is a DC comic. And this is just a really bleak view of humanity on display here. Really, I love this story. This is amazing. Especially considering the time and that it's DC. Or if it was Marvel or DC, it would be remarkable. It's just like, wow. And so, hats off to Frank Robbins and Jack Sparling. Both the art and the story are really good. And then we have a letter page. I gotta mention something. So here's a guy from a letter from Edward Wilson from Saskatchewan. And at the end of his letter, remember, this is 1974. He says, why don't you do a story about drug addiction? Guys got hooked on morphine during the Civil War. If you're feeling really lucky and daring, you could do one about homosexuality. I understand that prisons are not the only places where homosexuals are, quote-unquote, created. So this is, that would have been a great story. But, of course, DC would never do that. Especially with the Comics Code Authority. I don't think they'd let him. And Archie Goodwin kind of does this diplomatic, what does he say? He says, he does admit that most of the readership are children. Which now we wouldn't care about, But back then, it was like homosexuality was something kids couldn't know about. And he says, until a subject can be done well and right for our entire readership, it's better to wait. The time for it will come. And I don't think DC War Comic ever tackled it. I don't know if the time ever came because DC War Comics ended in the 80s and they gave up the ghost. So there you go, guys. Another great DC War comic. I was going to do something because I just bought this, and these 70s DC comics, you can make them ad-free a lot of the times because the ads are in the same register. So I was going to... I've been doing this for years where I rip out the ads and then I have an adless comic. And I kind of wanted to do it for once on video. I was like, oh man, there's probably some hardcore collectors who'll be crying. They'll probably get my video banned. It'll be traumatic. It'll trigger them. But actually, it turns out this one isn't that way. The ads aren't on the same register. So you can't rip out the ads without flipping on a story page. Maybe this one? Uh-oh. Yeah, I gotta double check though. Okay, 4 pages. And then 4 pages. Yep. So you can go like this. Rip that out. I should have done it before I read it. I gotta say this ad. That's one of my favorite Batmans ever. That Neil Adams Treasury Edition cover. Fucking gorgeous. I think I own that. I'm not sure though. And I get rid of this karate ad and this Tom of Finland Jr. Charles Atlas ad. No, it's Joe Whiter. I love it. So there you go. And also, now I can fit more comics on my shelf. You know, over the years, I've done this for, I don't know, maybe 100 or 200 comics. So it gives me more room. Unfortunately, there's still plenty of ads left. But I have some DC comics from around this time where all the ads are on the same register. And they're completely ad-free now because of me ripping out the ads. So I hope that didn't traumatize some of you Wednesday warriors out there. Some of you slabbers. I hope you're okay. And I hope you guys like looking at this GI Combat. It's kind of my indulgence here. I don't, DC war comics or any war comics aren't like, they're pretty much fandom doesn't care. They never did. And you can still get them pretty cheap. You know, a superhero comic from this time would be so much more. Any shitty superhero comic would be more because it's, I don't know, part of the universe. But these war comics, nobody really collects them. Nobody cares. But it's some of the best writing and art in mainstream comics at the time. Just amazing stuff. More mature, because a lot of these readers were servicemen, were adult men. They knew it. They'd get letters from these servicemen. And so they knew that a big portion of their audience was adults, even though some kids still read them. I can imagine as a little kid liking this comic. It would just be maybe boring to me or confusing. Like, why is that guy mad at the dead guy, the dead kid? You know, like I wouldn't even get it. It's very mature kind of writing. And, I mean, it's not high art, but it's just definitely not for kids. Yeah, it's not like offensive, but it's just, I would have hated this comic when I was 9. I would have been like, yeah, this is weird. I don't like it. Okay, sorry guys, I've been rambling. I just had a really fun night at the bar. Everyone was very happy because of New Year's. And hope you guys have a good New Year. I'm not expecting to. I'm not liking our odds here for 2025. So I hope I'm wrong. And I don't know. But I'm glad whoever watches these videos keeps watching them, you know, the past year. Hey, got more subscribers and more views. And it's nice, you know. I would do this even if nobody was watching. I just want to show off my comics for posterity. But it's really nice that you guys watch them and you comment. I really like when you guys comment and you answer my questions, because sometimes I don't know what the hell's going on with these comics, and I can answer your questions sometimes. So I really appreciate it. And I hope you keep watching the channel throughout the new year. I'm going to keep trying to do one a day. I just feel like I can't keep this up, but I'm going to keep trying. Roughly one a day. I missed a few days here and there, but it's been months now. It's kind of consumed my life. Other than work and a little karaoke during the week, this is pretty much all I do, is read comics and make videos for them. So I just said, sorry, I'm rambling, and then I rambled more. So I'm sorry, and I hope you like this video, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.